I'll start off with talking more about how the role of technology has been evolving in the area of FP&A. So, Kelsey, I will ask you, what are some of the key challenges FP&A teams face when trying to build a stronger partnerships? And more importantly, and what digital tools can be used to enable those partnerships?
Yeah, great question. So we recently worked on a paper in partnership with FP&A Trends exactly on this topic. What does business partnering mean in the age of AI? And some of the points that were already raised here this morning, I think, came through in the data in that survey that they executed. 35% of FP&A professionals aren't really satisfied with their current business partnering process and framework. And I think it comes down to the fact that most FP&A professionals spend only about a third of their time on the storytelling element that really facilitates business partnering. We're still stuck in that stage where we're building the data lake, where we're bringing the data together, collecting it, and validating it. So that is a major challenge, is that we're dealing all the time with data collection and validation, very manual processes. And really, to bridge that gap is going to be even more challenging. We know we're dealing with more data than ever before. Our partners across the business are dealing with more data than ever before. So really, to overcome that challenge, we need better tools. And I think I know this from my past life. I used to use Excel for my budgeting, both at government levels and for nonprofits and in my private life as well. So knowing that about half of peers are still using Excel for budgeting and forecasting, it's an extremely powerful tool, but it's not great for collaboration. So when we're looking forward at the tools that we can use, it's actually an opportunity to become a better partner. Cloud-based tools are inherently built to actually facilitate collaboration. You're all speaking the same language in real time, and I think that movement and the role that technology will play away from just Excel and siloed data is really exciting.
Excellent. Thank you, Kelsey. With a similar concept of technology in our daily lives, now we understand that we are evolving towards AI and ML, and it's getting embedded in our day-to-day lives, and also it's getting embedded into our FP&A functions. So, Mark, if I ask you, and if you can help us guide us through, what roles and responsibilities do you see evolving across different FP&A functions, specifically in adopting AI and ML? And what practical functions and applications do you see of AI and ML in our finance functions?
Sure. So I think some of the barriers to what Kelsey's just been talking about is clearly time. So we all wish we could spend much more time getting underneath the skin of the numbers, understanding the context for the business. But guess what? We still have to produce the numbers and produce the packs and do all of the month end and everything like that we still have to do in our roles. And for years, there's been technology available to help us with that. But despite all that technology being there, I'm sure most of us in the room, just like I have been anywhere I've been, people still use Excel predominantly for everything that we do. We spend time cleansing data from our IT systems instead of actually using the data to figure out what it all means. We still spend an awful lot of time updating links in Excel, then doing it again because you're never quite sure if it worked, and then doing it again just to make sure. And all that saps time. And when I was building the business case for Workday Adaptive Planning at Brown Jacobson, I did an exercise to try and have a look at how much time we spend on these kinds of things versus the value-added time. So when I add up the time we spend doing month-end every month, the really long process it took us to do our budget, and every time we have to do a quarterly forecast, if I add all of that time up, I was left with about 6 weeks of an entire year when we actually had anything else to do other than those activities, which clearly is just nowhere near enough if we want to be strategic advisors to the business. And that was kind of the basis for why we built the case for getting a planning solution in, because the budgeting and forecasting aspects of our roles were the biggest escape of time. So that's where we lost the most amount of our time. So we predicted we could save half of that time, so then double that sort of 6 weeks to 12 weeks if we put a planning solution in place. And so since we've had that, I think we're now in a point where, with AI and ML coming into play, plus these sorts of tools available, we are genuinely now moving towards that environment where some of this technology can give us the time saves that we've been looking for years. And we have started to implement some of the functions of our tools to try and help us with that. So there's two that I sort of wanted to call out. So one is called Predictive Forecaster. So what Workday Adaptive Planning will do for us is Predictive Forecaster will look at your historic data. For us, we're using it for operating expenses. So it will look at our patterns of spend on operating expenses and understand kind of the seasonal patterns for how that works. At Brown Jacobson, we don't have a massive team of people who do the forecasting. So usually on a nominal code level, we don't bother to forecast our seasonality of cost. We basically just forecast an annual amount and divide it by 12 and hope for the best. What we've been able to do with Predictive Forecaster is basically use the technology to assess our prior cost data. It calculates a curve based on for each nominal what that looks like in the past, and then we're able to put an annual figure in for our costs, and it will use that curve effectively that it's built to seasonally apply how our costs might work. And we've been using that this year since April, when our financial year end started, and it's really helped us to be more accurate with our forecasting, which has been brilliant. And the second one is anomaly detection. So this is where adaptive planning will have a look at our previous patterns again of spend and income, and it will produce us a predicted forecast. So it will look at past data, what our growth trends have looked like, and then create a forward-looking view of the forecast. It will then compare that to the bottoms-up forecast that we've created, and it will identify any numbers that we've put in that might look like they're out of step with what it expects. So if we've put a couple of zeros in the wrong place, or if we've done that phasing wrong, it will highlight that for us and tell us that there might be a problem. And in the past, that kind of activity usually comes at the end of the budget process, when the team have to go back through Excel models and recalculate everything and reconcile and make sure that everything looks sensible. Whereas now we're able to do that exercise at the click of a button, which has been really, really good. And then the most recent example, this is not necessarily AI and ML related, but last week there was the budget announcement of NI rate increases and what that might mean for employers. As a law firm, people are our biggest asset, so staff costs are quite high. So for us, we wanted to know straight away, what impact is this going to have? And in our previous world, we would needed to have gone into lots of Excel models, change assumptions, flow it all through, add it all up. It would have taken us quite a long time. Using the scenario function in Workday, what we were able to do is just create a new scenario, change a cell in an assumption, and we had the answer in a couple of minutes, which is great. So those have been really good aspects of the technology that we've used, and I think we're going to see more of this obviously coming through. The question that we always want to know is, this all seems very theoretical. Can we have any practical examples of how it's going to work? And we're now starting to see some of those coming through, which has been really good.
Thank you, Mark. We all understand that, okay, we have technology in our daily lives, but in the end, the reasoning capability and the creative problem-solving capability of human beings cannot be surpassed by technology, or AI and ML in this case, where we are today. So it's important that we realize that the communication skills and the soft skills that we have is far much more advanced than any of the AI ML technologies out there. So I'm going to, Vilija, if I may ask you, in this new world that we are today, what strategies can be implemented to foster better communication across different teams, across your finance function, across different business functions that we have?
Okay, here I will still not steer away from technology.
Yeah.
I think that's quite key. So, so I think most important is to, first of all, get your data to the right point. So I will not even mention the fast month close and sort of things that just hygiene factors, if you will. But then talking about, let's say, financial planning data, I think often in finance, we don't think about it in terms of maybe it should be self-service. What I mean by that, we should get it to the stage where we don't necessarily have to, have a station where we present it in a certain cadence or in certain reporting pattern, but it should be just available to everyone at any time they wish to open a system. It sounds, it's still, by the way, at Vinted, we're still working towards it, so I'm not saying we have fully implemented that, but on some things, we have implemented it. So, I mean, we do use, I guess I will call out some names. We do use Workday and we use Pigment, and these systems like help everyone in the business to know their costs, to know their headcount, to know as much as possible from this perspective about the business without needing to sort of each time ask for data extract from FP&A team. And to the more the data can be self-service, the more time I think the FP&A team or other finance professionals, by the way, I actually sit in the business unit, so I guess I'm in commercial finance, the more time, but in general, still anyone in marketplace business unit when embedded, anytime anyone has a question about finance that's not already made available to them, they'll come back to me about so many details that they could have otherwise looked up. And then instead of having a dialogue how to improve something or how does, what will happen if we don't improve something and so on, we are having a dialogue about physical data points. So I think self-service of data, that's super important. Well, I will also advocate in terms of communication. So once you have or close to self-service data, or replacing that with a very frequent reporting that's easily readable. So whether it's, well, actually we use Google Sheets still, yes. Whether it's in Google Sheets, but as long as it's accessible to everyone, and that's the advantage, that's also, I suppose, fine in the meantime. It just needs to be available easily. So once that's out of the way, I think another thing about communication is, well, again, it's rather preparation. So for example, talking about plans in advance. So businesses sharing their plans, but also finance, understanding what their roadmap is and how to make sure these two things like come together and there are no bottlenecks at any point. So for us, generally, finance team Echo was always to support the business as Vinted has been growing very fast. So finance was always there, just make sure we can actually do everything that the business needs us to do. But in general, it can only be possible if you share plans well in advance, well, as soon as you have them really in real time. And just talking about some of the tools that help that communication as well, for us, it's basic, it's Slack. It's actually really helpful. And again, back to the Google Sheets. As soon as that's available, you can share it. Slack, it's also instant communication. So it's nothing you are waiting to receive an email. You can always ask, you can always reach out. I'm sure, so I probably could add many more things, but I think that's the key points here.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. So we're now transitioning to a topic around human skills, our collaboration and communication. So, Soufyan, if I may ask you, what skills should FP&A leaders ensure that their teams have to be seen as strategic partners and to help their departments better serve each other?
Well, now that we have more and more technology, we have to understand what differentiates us from the technology. And those are definitely human skills. And I see 3 skills that FP&A leaders and CFOs need to develop in their teams. The first one is a consulting mindset, in the sense that consultants will come there in order to solve a problem. And that's what we need to ensure in our mindset as FP&A leaders, that when we have figures in front of us, when we have a report in front of us, this is only an information. But to make sure that it becomes an insight, we have to extract the signal from the noise and go beyond that. Make sure that we find what the problem is and make recommendations on how to solve it. That's the first skill, the consulting mindset. The second one would be communication, storytelling, because that's good to identify what needs to be solved, but if you can't communicate, you will not make sure that the people you are discussing with will do something about it. Storytelling is the human skill that we need to develop today to make sure our teams have this business partnering mindset and are able to discuss with their business partners and make them do something. People only act when they are touched, only act when they see what's in it for them. And storytelling is the way to do so. Fortunately enough, that's trainable because I sucked at it when I was working in FP&A, but you can train that as well as the consulting mindset. And the third point to be seen as a strategic partner is visibility. You have to make sure as an FP&A leader or as a CFO that your teams are visible. If they are not seen by their business partners, if they are not on the first line presenting the monthly results, presenting the budget, presenting the forecast, well, they will not be trusted. And trust is the number one condition that people will partner with you. So whoever you are in finance, you have to be visible. And that's the third and almost most important skill that you have to develop to become a strategic business partner.
Thank you, Soufyan. If I may ask, Kelsey, if you can elaborate what Soufyan was just mentioning and how we can better integrate between the teams of FP&A and your businesses.
Yeah, skills. I think it's also important as we're thinking about FP&A teams of the future too, that we're also looking to add in skills that really help support those communication methods. I think those soft skills are going to be really, really critical. But also having someone on your team with a data scientist mindset and someone who really comes to look at the tools as an architect, someone who understands the governance process that connects the tools to the actual processes. I think that's going to be really critical to have both those soft skills prioritized, but also making sure that you're hiring the people on your team who can help facilitate the tools to make life easier.
Maybe I can add here as well.
Please.
So one thing that's also, I agree, very critical is for FP&A team to potentially track the business performance really closely and if you see any difference in trend or anything like, let's say, be first to notice, be first to maybe offer some analytical insights. I think that will become quite important. And for this, of course, analytical skills continue to be critical as well, I think, in the team as you're forming a team as a whole.